Metro Cop scene. This is another scene designed to make it clear that the Metro Cops are the bad guys, except this time the player has a weapon and can finally do something about it. That something comes out of the barrel of a gun. We knew we needed the player to feel righteous, and this moment was part of creating that. The Metro Cops are still human, unlike the rest of the Combine in the game, so we felt like we had to go the extra mile in making sure the player's actions felt like justice and not just wrath.
Mostantól keresni fogják. Jobb, ha menekül. Itt már semmit sem tehet.
Staircase. There are situations throughout the game that stem from simple and quite straightforward design goals, and this staircase features two of them. The first was to frame the Citadel as it awakened, showing the player they stirred up the hive. The second was to showcase our ragdoll system. While it's standard now, in 2004 it was still a novelty to see bodies tumble realistically, and stairs provided a perfect stage to make that happen.
City 17 awakens. The early train station section was designed to make the city feel indifferent toward the player, as if Gordon is just another nameless, faceless citizen, ripe for subjugation. But during the tenement raid and rooftop chase, the city identifies the player as an anomaly and starts to stir. Now, with the player as the aggressor, the city fully turns its attention on them. The Overwatch PA system, first heard during the raid, played a key role in delivering this message. If players listen closely, there's a lot of information about the city's awareness. Even when players didn't pay attention, though, the audio treatment still conveyed the emotional message we were aiming for.
Azonosítatlan személy. Azonnal erősítse meg polgári státuszát a helyi védelmi csoportnál.
Explosive barrels. Here, we introduce explosive barrels, a staple of first-person shooters, but with a new twist. The second pistol shot sets the barrel on fire, starting a timed detonation. A third shot will detonate the barrel immediately. This way, players could either delay the explosion or trigger it right away, depending on the situation. Players may want to feed an explosive barrel to a barnacle and then shoot it twice as a handy way to safely dispatch a cluster of them. The delayed explosion also made for more interesting chain reactions between multiple barrels. Exploding barrels were a fan favorite in the series, but also were internally favored by level designers who often felt like the game could never have enough of them.
Lambda caches. Technically, the first Lambda cache is at Kleiner's lab, but this is the first one the player finds on their own. We added Lambda caches to encourage exploration and to hint to players where hidden resources could be found, with the fiction being that they were placed by the Resistance as part of their underground rebellion. In Half-Life, the contents of supply crates were predetermined by the level design. In Initial 2, we introduced adaptive item crates. These give the player whatever they are low on at the time, based on resource targets set by the level designer.
Scanners. Scanners presented a tricky game design challenge. While we liked how their dystopian presence helped convey the Combine occupation as an oppressive surveillance state, we didn't actually want them to shoot at the player. We found that aiming into the sky to hit a small mobile enemy with a constant height advantage was something we couldn't make fun. Since we loved their role in the story, we decided that in combat, scanners would serve primarily as eyes, alerting nearby enemies to the player's presence, a feature we reinforced with sound effects from the soldiers. Beyond that, they'd only be able to harass the player with bright lights and occasionally dive bomb after taking enough damage.
Overwatch. During development, we generated the Overwatch voice using a free text-to-speech tool, but as we neared shipping, we realized we didn't actually have the rights to use it, so we held auditions with voice actors to find someone who could match the qualities we liked in the generated lines. Didn't take long before we found Ellen McLean, whose delivery was exactly what we were looking for. In her sessions, we played the generated lines for her to mimic, though in her own style. She was a bit sarcastic at first, given that she was being asked to replicate such a robotic delivery, but years later when she returned for her iconic role as GLaDOS in Portal, she'd found a way to creatively integrate that tone into her performance. Pistol design. The standard pistol is the workhorse of the game, functioning not only as the first range weapon you learn to use, but also as a method to interact with physics and destructible objects at a safe distance for the entirety of the game. To help make it feel more responsive and fun to use, the pistol employs a refire mechanic that's unique to it in the game. The gun will fire as fast as the player can click their input button, meaning that they feel an instant response to their input, and the faster they can click, the faster they can shoot. Shatter glass. When designing early levels where there are fewer mechanics in the player's toolkit, we found that it's just as engaging to spotlight new technical features instead, as we did here with breakable glass. For the shattering effect, glass was divided into a grid of small squares, allowing us to track which were intact or broken, and to blow out larger sections once enough squares were no longer connected. Each square was rendered with a unique texture based on the status of its neighboring squares, creating the sharp, jagged edges between broken and intact glass. While breaking glass is now commonplace in games, it was something we hadn't seen much back when we were making Half-Life 2, and we're incredibly happy with the level of fidelity and dynamicism it brought to the game.
Helicopter Peekaboo. The Combine Attack Helicopter as central antagonist was something we wanted to develop throughout the entire chapter. The relentless chopper became a character in its own right. Here, if you listen and look overhead, you can hear its engine and see it flying along the train tracks and into the distance. This first glimpse is a small piece of foreshadowing, with its presence becoming more pronounced over time, until eventually you're squaring off against it.
Figyelme! Azonosítatlan személy.
Iterative passes. Some chapters of the game, such as the on-foot sections of the canals in Ravenholm, were developed in multiple passes by different cabals. We found that handing off maps in this way led to greater variety in the experience, and a higher density of interesting moments, as each cabal added their unique touches to the maps. In the on-foot portion of the canals, the first pass established the art direction and the player path, along with the broad strokes of the experience and some major beats. But the team-wide alpha playtest identified insufficient tension and a somewhat monotonous experience here. In our second pass, we returned to the map solely focused on creating that tension and greatly increased the density of moment-to-moment scenarios.
Reagál, izolál, tudapol. A közösségben státuszkezelés folyik. Reagál, izolál, tudapol.
Water shader. The most complex shader we made for the game was the water shader, which made full use of the newly available programmable graphics cards. When water was present, the scene was rendered 3 times. First, the underwater world for refraction, second, a reflected view, and third, the parts above the water. When rendering the water surface, we blended the refractive and reflective views, showing more reflection at glancing angles using the Fresnel equation. We also tracked the ground depth below the water's surface, making it more transparent and less refractive in shallow areas. Additionally, we had to create 2 alternate water rendering techniques for lower-end graphics cards. Mid-range cards displayed a lower detail reflection without refraction or transparency, while low-end cards only rendered a partially transparent surface.
Interstitial scenes. As playtesting progressed, we often found areas where players lost track of their goal, which isn't uncommon in a game like Half-Life. To address this, we added smaller interstitial scenes to help guide players along their path and reinforce their objective. After finishing the bulk of development on our larger choreo scenes, like Kleiner's Lab, putting these smaller scenes together became relatively straightforward. We discovered that using characters in these moments worked much better than relying on passive storytelling, or even some sort of reminder you'd find baked into a pause menu.
Boxcar Joe. This small scene originally featured 2 human characters, but later in development we replaced one with a Vortigaunt. We wanted to show that Vortigaunts were coexisting with humans and resisting the Combine as well. We also introduced their ability to heal the player, though we didn't fully capitalize on that feature throughout the game. Vortigaunts became a useful narrative tool for keeping dialogue brief, as their hive mind justified their full knowledge of the world and the player's goals. This meant they never had to ask questions, neatly sidestepping the challenge of writing dialogue for a silent protagonist.
Ugyanazt a rejtét szolgáljuk.
Jobb, ha odébb áll.
Figyelem a közösségnek. Nyugtalansági eljárás van érvényben. Beold, fajt, véd.